for game day about the modules.
Yeah. 1 second, let me pull up a couple things. So, reps and I have been getting questions about people being able to like they're not seeing the course. So I know a lot of people are new and have just signed up for it. So just want to, oh, can you let me share screen, Jen?
Todd.
Or Todd? I don't know if that's Todd.
It's Todd.
I apologize. What was the question?
Can you let me screen share, please?
Oh, okay. All set.
Okay. So here is a screenshot of what it looks like when you first get into the course. So it isn't obvious, but right underneath the actions, you have to click on these 3 dots and then click start course or continue course in order to get into the actual course. And then, let's see, I probably need to stop sharing this one and share this screen. So for people that did the game day module already, you want to make sure that the first time you go back into this, if you're not seeing this as the first module that you need to do and it's trying to get you to start over, make sure that you go in and clear your cookies and cache. So sign out of reps, get out of that screen, and then clear your cookies and cache and then go back into it. If that doesn't solve the problem, that's when you'd want to submit a ticket to reps. They are pretty quick about answering those and fixing any issues like that. As of this morning, I believe they've only received, I think, like 10 tickets since we released this competitive module last week out of the like almost 700 people that we have enrolled in it. Let's see. The other thing you want to pay attention to is I've had some people ask me about the slides. Over here on the side, there are documents and links. Some of them have example plays. We're going to try to work on some more example plays, but we can't guarantee how much we're going to get out by the end of December because obviously it's a very busy month for everyone. But here with the New York State slides, you just click on this. If you don't see the actual slides come up and you see, I was getting like a red line here before that basically said that you couldn't download or you couldn't view it. That's okay if you cleared your cache. A lot of times you can still click on this download button and download those. But again, if you're ever having problems, just submit to support.refreps.com. I think that's all I have. When you go back out here, you can see all of the modules. When you've finished all the modules, you have the ability to go back in at any time and view any of the videos or any of the resources that are in those. And then also if you go down to the course info, we also have built in here this Q&A resource that has the link for you to submit questions, which is what we're covering in this. And I think that's all I have. Jen, I think Medea's on now.
Okay, can Medea open up the links for the questions and can she see them? Or if you have a question, we did this in the fall. If you have a question, if you put it into the chat, we will go through the questions as we get them. Medea, if you are on, if you have questions that have been submitted to you already, you could start with those.
Jen, I don't think Medea's on. She was getting her kids settled.
Double check. I thought she had said she was.
I'm on. She's just screaming really loud right now. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I do have the questions up, Jen, if that helps. I can go through them.
Yep.
If you want.
Yep. Go. Yep.
So the first question is, would a toss to extended, lib, or target fall in the same toss category as a basket toss, or is it considered a release? Looking to see if the see for the variety driver if these would hit as one basket and one release or as 2 tosses. Medea, I don't know if you have the ability to answer.
She's
Sorry,
off
I'm gonna see
mic.
if, sorry, I'm just switching with my husband really quick. 1 second.
Read the question again.
It was. Would a toss to extended lib or target fall in the same toss category as a basket toss, or is it considered a release? Looking to see for the variety driver if these would hit as one basket and one release, or as 2 tosses.
Those would be considered stunts, release stunts. Those would not be considered a basket toss.
Okay, so the toss to extended lib or target would be considered a release.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Next question. For the full team driver or variation driver, do the three different skills have to be your highest difficulty skills in order to get these drivers?
No. So how that works are the drivers are automatically typically considered into a difficulty score. These drivers essentially, you could come out with a 1.5 difficulty score, and that be inclusive of your drivers, if that is the difficulty of your team, because at the end of the day, this still is comparative scoring. Those drivers are considerations that the judges need to be making when it comes into that difficulty score, which is why we pulled those out as separate drivers. So any skills that meet the requirements of the drivers would warrant credit for the driver.
Okay, thank you. Next one. If you need 3 stunt groups for a full team and you've already done 2 skills with a full team, then you do 2 switch ups and just 1 lib, or just one of those or let me say this differently, then 2 do switch ups and just 1 does a lib. Would that count as full team libs getting the full team driver, and their difficulty could go up a little from where the libs would fall for the 2 switch ups? So kind of like assumed tumbling skills is what they're talking about there.
If a liberty has not been a skill that you were already executing, as it's a different skill for maximum participation, is that what you're asking? Sorry.
Yeah, they're
Participation.
saying they did 2 other skills at full team, and then their third skill is basically libs because they've got 1 doing a lib and the other 2 groups are doing switch ups. But they're asking is, can those switch ups be just counted as hitting libs?
That would be 3 separate. Yeah, that would be 3 libs. The difference is that, of course, when it is considered in that 8.5 portion of the score, those switch ups would obviously have a different weight in a comparative scoring than a straight up lib would.
Okay.
I have a question in the chat, Casey.
Go ahead.
The videos are really helpful. Just asking, if you have 15 in class C and D and do 3 stunts with the same skills, would they score higher than a team who only did 2 stunts with the same skills?
So first of all, before Medea jumps into, I just want to mention that the idea of the class size and the groups that you are required to have, that's totally separate from your difficulty. That is just a
Correct. That's,
yeah.
yeah.
You know, it's just a requirement that if you do not meet it and your section has decided to implement it all year, if you do not use 3 stunt groups, or, you know, for a class C and D, if you don't use 2 stunt groups minimum at some point, you'd get a 3-point deduction. Then Medea, you want to talk about the other half of that? Like, what would difficulty look like if you, well, I guess with that question though, Jen, we really need to think about if you're able to do 3 stunt groups, it really depends on how many you have on the team, right, Medea?
Yes, so it's all going to be based on the number of participants on your team, exactly what you just said. If a team only has 10 athletes, their score when it comes to difficulty is based on the participation of those 10 athletes and the difficulty of the skills that they execute. And we're just talking about that 8.5 score now. If a team has 12 athletes on the floor versus 10 athletes, then they have the ability to do 3 stunt groups. But obviously, if the team that, so they could essentially score exactly the same if we're talking about apples to apples here and the same exact skills being performed when it comes to difficulty, or they could be very close to it. One thing that might boost the score of a team with fewer athletes would be executing those as single bases. So it's not so much when it comes to the actual difficulty of the skill, it's not so much how many athletes are on the floor, it's how you utilize the athletes that are on the floor to maximize the most difficult and the best executed skills that you can perform. All other things considered is separate from that.
Okay, the next question. I'm having difficulty with understanding how a team. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jen. You're cutting out, Jen. We can't hear you.
Nope, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the question is, I'm having difficulty with understanding how a team doing the same stunts or pyramids each day, same number of stunt groups, etc., can get an 8 in difficulty one day and a 6 in difficulty the other day.
That is comparative scoring. So it is not, your skills do not have an actual value. Your skills are compared based on the skills of the other teams performing within your division at a specific event. So if you are the hardest executed team and you had an 8 in difficulty, and then at the next event, the first team on the floor happens to be the hardest and they were given an 8.5 in difficulty, and you're given a 7.5 because it's justifiable to separate you comparatively by a point, then your score could be lower. Same for that 6. If I score the first team out on the floor at a 7.5, just in case comparably there's a team that comes out with harder skills, then that might put you at a 6. Again, comparatively, where you fall. It's not the actual number for each score that matters, it's the ranking for each score that matters. So you have to remember that as you're comparing your competition scores from event to event, just looking at the rankings as a whole.
And this is why we really emphasized in the course that things like the total score that you're seeing, that does not matter. It's the ranking that you want to look at. And, you know, things like the grand champion, that doesn't make sense in a comparative scoring system. It doesn't mean anything, especially if you have multiple panels. Next question. Just for clarification on stunt difficulty, there is the 3-point deduction if you do not hit the minimum stunt group requirement. If you're required 3 stunt groups and use 2 in the stunt sequence, but 3 in the pyramid, you will receive that deduction, or no, since you hit 3 groups in the pyramid. So the state requirement, if your section chooses to implement it, you would be required to use that number of groups at some point in the routine. It doesn't matter whether you use them for stunts or pyramids. I don't know, Jen, if you want to add anything more to that, or does that work?
No, say that again. You cut out on me.
Sorry. For the state requirement, which has nothing to do with the actual difficulty, just the 3-point deduction, if your section chooses to implement it throughout the year, you just have
Correct.
to use your minimum stunt groups at some point in the routine, and they don't even have to do the same skill. So it could be in a pyramid sequence, it could be stunt sequence, it doesn't matter which one. You just need to have that number of groups in the air at some point in the routine in order to avoid the 3-point deduction.
Correct.
Okay.
So one of the, let me grab a question.
Mm-hmm.
Since there is only a building brick now, will the skills be scored the same done in either partner stunts or pyramid? Example, a high to high is in the, hang on. Is in the 4 range. Would it still be a 4 when a brace is added to make it a pyramid?
So this is really about the idea of us having just a single
Correct. Document.
progression. Medea, you want to talk about how that's going to affect it?
Yes, so obviously bracing always adjusts the difficulty of a skill. If the skill is listed as a standalone skill, then it's legal without a bracer. Once you add one bracer, you have brought the difficulty of that skill down. Once you add two bracers, you have brought the difficulty of that skill down. So, and again, the judges are not necessarily going to be looking at your stunt skills versus your pyramid skills, because it's not just about the actual skill you perform. There's so much more that goes into that difficulty score, including some of the way these drivers are used. We're guaranteeing you these drivers, but additionally, pace creates combinations of skills. Combinations of skills make skills more difficult. There's no way to have a full skills list of everything that you could possibly do in cheerleading nowadays.
So with bracers, Medea, when they actually get braced makes a difference in the difficulty too as well, correct?
Absolutely. So if you can complete the skill to the top with no bracers and then brace once the skill is completed its execution, that is the most difficult way to perform a standalone skill in a pyramid. Once you add a bracer, if it's braced from initiation, then that is the lowest of the difficulty, especially if that's on two sides. If it's braced as it's executing, so, you know, they're doing a round off up to the top, but on their way up to the top, you've got two bracers grabbing it, then that reduces the difficulty because they're still coming in and bracing. However, in comparison to a team that braces it right off of the ground, they're holding on to the leg or the waist or whatever, helping to drive it. That is obviously the easiest way to do it. So the timing of your connection does matter too when it comes to difficulty, as well as how the skill itself is executed, the rotation of the hips, completion of the skill, everything.
Any more questions on your end, Jen, before I move on?
Yep. Two of them were going back to about comparative scoring. I think you have to go back to what Casey talked about in the beginning, was look to see where you are comparing with the other teams that are competing. If that makes sense to the people who are asking it. If you're competing against the same teams, it doesn't mean everyone is doing exactly the same thing week in and week out. Section of pyramid, why is bracing being considered when scoring the skills? I understand one bracer versus two bracers, but why don't we have a separate progression for pyramid? It seems like pyramid is basically doing single stunts all over again and then bracing when the skill is over. We used to have the two different progression sheets, but it became too confusing and it was the same type of skills. And since we're getting rid of finite scores, it was easier to go to the one. Anything Medea and Casey you want to add?
That pyramid progression sheet that you guys have used in the past said exactly that. It said with one bracer, it's here. With two bracers, it's here. So it's essentially the same thing. It's just without it being written out on two separate pieces of paper, so that it was actually becoming more confusing for the coach and for the judge having it on two pieces of paper versus just on the one.
Okay, next question is, if you have 5 stunt groups total during your routine, but only utilize 4 in your pyramid stunt groups, would that alter the difficulty?
You should always strive to maximize your stunt groups where you can when you're looking at maximizing your difficulty scores. And again, remember that the drivers that you receive start over for pyramids. They're not the same for stunts as they are for pyramids. So you do start over as far as needing to meet those maximum participation, etc. And if you're asking that question in comparison to team numbers, like a team of 16 versus a team of 20, that goes back to one, how you choreograph with creative elements that you attach to the actual skills that can impact the difficulty of the skills, as well as you know, how you utilize the 4 groups versus how you utilize the 5 groups embracing. It's relative to the number of athletes you have on your team, not relative to someone else does one extra stunt because they have more athletes.
Casey, I want to go back to something that I think we may have confused people on. When we did the minimum numbers for the classifications, it's based on stunt groups. So when you're doing the minimum numbers to meet, it is on the stunt groups. It's not stunt and or pyramids and or something else. It's the stunt groups. Does that make it clear? I don't know if we may have confused people on that. Alice, Andrea, did I say that correctly?
So I'm looking at the things that we approved at the state, and it just says utilizing 3 stunt groups. But I guess the way I was interpreting it is that you are using stunt groups in pyramids. But because
No, it's
my understanding is that's about the team. It's basically a team size requirement, right? Because there's nothing to do with difficulty.
It's stunt, yeah, but we're talking about when you go to do the stunts. The minimum
I'm just looking through the verbiage to see if there was anything we said in there that would contradict that, just to make sure we're saying the right thing.
It was my understanding that it had to be the stunt sequences.
stunt groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not if you used them in pyramid, that fulfilled the requirement.
Andrea, that's your understanding as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking through the slides. I don't think I see anything about pyramids, so I think we're good there.
Okay. I think the way we said it before, it may have been confusing to people. So I just wanted to make sure we clarified.
Yeah, that's fine with me. So I was just looking through the verbiage to see if there was anything in there, but I think you're good there.
Okay. Ooh, wow.
So yeah,
There's a lot of,
just with so what we're saying is that you have to utilize them in stunts, not not in pyramids.
okay.
Oh wait, we did say it somewhere that you guys approved.
Yep.
I don't know
It's-
if you wanna.
We'll move on. We'll
Sorry,
make sure.
I'm just logging on, so I missed out a couple things. Did you guys everyone defined the stunt group, right? What it means?
In terms of how many people are involved in
People,
the stunt group?
yes.
Yeah,
4.
we have not.
All right, let's move on and we'll send that out. The language. Okay. So I'm going to go through a couple here, Casey. If you have 5 stunt groups total during your routine, but only utilize 4 in your pyramid stunt groups, would that alter the difficulty? That's again skewing the lines of size and difficulty.
If you have 5 stunt groups that you're stunting with in your stunt sequence, but then you go to your pyramid and you're only utilizing 4, that can absolutely play an effect on your difficulty score as well as your max participation score. Or max participation driver, sorry.
Any other questions, Jen, or you want me to jump back onto this one?
Now move on to the next question.
So the next question is, See, why is there not an area on the score sheet to show the points received for the driver? If both stunt and pyramid difficulty alone is 0 to 8.5, then 0 to 0.5, 0 or 0.5 for each driver, they should be separated on the score sheet to be a little more transparent for coaches. Jen, do you want to handle that one?
I'm sorry, say that again.
They're asking about adding like basically like something on the score sheets to indicate whether or not someone received the drivers under stunts and pyramids.
Yeah, we're talking about the easiest way to do that is to either put a checkbox or something on there. We'll figure it out with the score sheets, either electronically or the sheets themselves.
Perfect. Next one. Is it safe to assume that skills caught at prep as opposed to being caught at extended drop a level? For example, a full up switch up caught at extended is an elite skill. If a team did a full up switch up to prep level, would that fall in advanced? You want to talk about that one, Medea?
Well, you're absolutely correct in assuming that you would not get credit for a skill being executed to the extended position. And that also brings up a very good point that your difficulty score is also, some people hear me say all the time, your execution can impact your difficulty score. And this is a great example. Did they catch at prep because that was the technique that was taught, or that was the way that it was executed? It caught at prep and then power press to the extended level. As it goes with any stunt that you happen to see that is not listed on there, such as a skill that comes to the prep level, if you do not see it listed on the progression sheet, that is where judges will look for two comparable skills, the higher end of the skill, the actual skill and where it was intended to be caught. Then they'll look at a lower level skill. In their minds, they will write down where that falls for them and then comparatively how it will affect their score. Because remember, there are no ranges associated with that progression sheet.
Okay. Let's see. Question about the drivers again, so we're all set there. Does a full up switch up count as a release and twisting skill? So this is that question, Medea, about when you do multiple things and how does that affect your drivers?
While it is two, it would be one or the other. So if you already had executed a release but not a twisting skill, then that would count as your twisting skill. If you've already executed a twisting skill but not a release, that would count as your release skill. So then also, did you invert? Did you, because we have inverting, releasing, and spinning skills to the top, to a body position. Those would only count as one also. So it would be, did you have another inversion? Does that count as an invert? That wouldn't count as the inversion then. That would count as your release or your twisting based on what the other skill is that you already have been given credit for. When it comes to the difficulty of the score, however, the more of those elements that you combine together, releasing, twisting, inverting all in one, that can also impact positively your difficulty score. So keep that in mind as well.
Okay. Another driver question. So it says all examples given in the modules are for super elite skills. The coaches that have lower level teams or modified and JV coaches would really benefit from some examples surrounding intermediate and advanced skills. Can those be provided to the coaches like some of the examples provided in the super elite categories? So that's something that we can take back when we're thinking about doing any more video plays to add into the course or making adjustments for next year. On the progression sheet under release skills, what are the difference between these skills? Fourth bullet down under elite, full twisting switch up, then the third bullet down under super elite, full twisting release moves to extended, low to high tick, ball up, and quick toss. So the first one is just going to cover a switch up. It starts from the ground, so it's a release, but it's not a release transition. So the other bullet is referring to going from one skill to another, which makes it a release transition. So that's why they're giving examples of like a low to high, a ball up, and the quick toss. Medea, there, how does that fall into that one? Can you explain that piece? Or is it just that I think it was the switch up just ended up being it's a bit easier of a skill than those other ones?
I don't know where
Hello?
she went.
Oh, did we lose her?
I don't know.
Andrew or Alice, do either of you want to weigh in on that?
Actually, that was my question. That was my question because what is the difference?
So I know in the past they were separated because a switch up is easier than doing like going from one skill to the other because it was a transitional skill, but I don't know how a quick toss falls into that, if that's along the
Right.
same difficulty lines as those, or maybe it's just a little bit easier. Do we lose Medea? I don't see her on here. She might have gotten cut off. We can come back to that. Let me see if she's still on here.
You want me to go through? There's a couple of mine.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, if a team competes co-ed, Andrew, you can chime in till we get Medea back. If a team competes co-ed with one co-ed stunt, because there's only one male, doing elite skills, and 3 all-girl stunts doing super elite skills at the same time, how would that difficulty get scored? Would the super elite skills count, or would we be scored in the elite category? Also, how does that work with the drivers? So it's 4 stunt groups, 1 doing elite, and 3 doing super elite. Doesn't matter if they're boys, girls, whatever, it's the same division. Did you guys hear me?
Can you say that
Yeah,
again, Jen?
I think what's important, I would let Medea answer it, but I think what's important to note is you do not need full team stunts to achieve difficulty points. So the full team stunts are only for the drivers.
Driver.
So
Mhm.
you can still achieve difficulty points from your 3 super elite stunts. And then comparatively, it's what you do, compared to the other teams. But those 3 super elite stunts are still going to get scored. You're still going to receive credit for them. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Jen, it's Stephanie.
Yeah.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
So I think people are still, just from the wording of that question, I think people are still sort of hung up on that super elite being worth a 5 and elite being worth a 4 and advanced being worth a 3.
Agreed.
That's just something that, so, if one team has 4 stunt groups and they go out and do 3 super elite stunts by all 4 stunt groups, they're going to be given a score. And if the next team comes out and they have 4 stunt groups and only 3 of those groups are doing 3 super elite skills, then their score is going to be a little bit lower. But there is not going to be an 8.8 every single week. One week it might be 8.8, one week it might be 7.7, and it doesn't matter as long as you are ranked comparatively within your division. So it's just going to take people, some time, officials and coaches, some time to wrap their heads around that. But that's basically how I interpreted that question.
And I'm looking in the chat, and it seems to be, and I would agree with you, Stephanie, that seems to be where a lot of these questions are leading to.
Jen, I think it also goes back to the fact that every stunt you do will be counted towards your difficulty. It's not what it used to be where it's just your 3 most difficult. So everything you do will count. I think where, as Stephanie said, people are stuck on that you have to have full team this or full team that. You have to take the drivers out of it for difficulty. And it's what you do compared to what other people do.
Okay.
Jen, Medea got kicked off and we're at our 100-person max. So
Got it.
she can't get back in. Do you want me to drop? And
No,
Andrew-
she can tell her to call you, and she can be on the phone and hear it. Did you hear me?
Yeah. 1 second here.
Hello.
Hey, we're gonna try just having you, I've got you on speaker so that it can catch you. So, and then can you say something and just make sure everyone else can hear?
Hello.
Can everyone hear
I
that?
can hear, yeah, I can hear.
Okay, great. So Medea, the
Yep.
next question, let's see where we left off. Oh, Jen, did you want her to weigh in on the last question that we just talked about?
No, I think Stephanie answered it pretty well.
And I think the next comment, I think Taylor's in the chat, that one kind of piggybacks right off it. So I think that's, Jen, if you want to read that one.
The building progression one, that one?
Yeah.
So are the building progressions essentially suggestions for coaches to know what the judges will score as more difficult? It is not ensured you will score in that difficulty range you performed because of the comparative scoring, right?
Correct. There's actually no range associated with any of the skills that are listed on the sheet.
Can you guys hear her?
Yep. Keep going.
Yeah, no, that's it. So there's no guaranteed score for any of the skills on the progression sheet, and there's no range associated with any of those. So it is 100% strictly based on comparative scoring. The skills are listed in order of progression, more as a guide for you as the coach, as well as the judges, just as a reminder of what skill comes before the next when you're teaching these skills at home. The goal is not for you to go to the super elite skills, assume that they're going to automatically be your 8.5 scoring skills, and choreograph those, skipping over all the progressions that fall before that. So if you haven't mastered advanced, you probably should not be performing super elite.
This is Gail. Can you hear me? Am I being heard?
Who?
Gail from section 11, Gail Verne.
Can you put it in the chat, Gail, so we can get through the other questions?
It's not a question, it's a quick comment.
Well, then wait till the end. Gail, wait till the end then.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
The other one, Medea, that we had talked about on our progression sheet, and it's been on there for quite a while. So we have full twisting switch up as one bullet point, and it's a little bit lower than another bullet that says full twisting release moves to extended, low to high tick, ball up, and quick toss. My understanding in the past is that switch ups are easier than the other 3 that are listed in the higher bullet point. And because it's starting on the ground, but also, and so it's basically not going from stunt to stunt. But when you think about it, that quick toss also does that. So what is it about a quick toss that makes that harder than just a switch up?
Well, when you're thinking of a switch up, technically it's released for a very minimum amount of time versus a quick toss that is going to be released for a much longer period of time. Additionally, when they already have 1 foot in the air and 1 foot on the ground, and just in the load in position of a switch up, the top person is able to assist in that boost to get the amount of height that's necessary to execute the skill. Where when you're executing it from a toss grip, you are completely released for an extended period of time, and the top person is completely reliant on their body positioning to complete that skill. So it does make it more difficult. It is, even though as a component, the entire group's involved, independently, more individuals in the stunt group are having to work independently.
Thank you. I have a tumbling question. So if you have half team tumbling in the intermediate range, such as round off series handsprings, will it negatively impact your tumbling score to do a skill that is in the basic range, such as full team cartwheels? Won't your difficulty score then start in the basic range and only get sprinkle points for additional skills done?
It all depends on synchronization, really, because there is no majority max requirements for tumbling. In honesty, when judges look at the tumbling skills, they look at the hardest skills done by the largest group, and that's where they kind of set your ideal score. So if you have majority athletes tumbling in a round off back handspring, then that is probably going to be on the lower end of your intermediate score, where anything that you would do additionally could potentially sprinkle to your score based on comparison of other teams within your division, unless you're going into that higher range with some of those small group skills.
So it shouldn't hurt their score to do a full team cartwheel when they also did half of their team doing those round off series handsprings, correct?
Absolutely not.
When it comes to the maximum participation driver, this is only involving groups of 4 and not necessarily everyone on the mat, correct? For example, a smaller team of maybe 10 would not be required to use all 10 athletes in a pyramid to get the maximum participation driver, right?
Maximum participation is based on traditional groups of 4.
And I believe, Andrea, you mentioned that earlier, that when we talk about a group, we're talking about 4. And then, Medea, if you did a single base skill, that's fine as well.
Yes. So you will not be penalized because you did a single base skill. However, the single base skill could also play a positive impact on your difficulty score if we're talking about the same skill as a full group versus a single base.
Let's see. So another question about the driver. And then I want to confirm that baskets count as variety category of their own, separate from release skills, and can count towards a variety driver along with a release. So we kind of talked about this in an earlier question. An actual basket toss would count as a toss, and that was a category for our variety, as opposed to the toss to a skill is going to be considered a release, which she talked about earlier. Last one that I have, if you do a back handspring full up, would that just count as a release, or would that count as a twist? Or is it both? So this kind of goes along with another question we had earlier as well.
Yep, it would just be where it's needed when you're looking at variety. So if you need a release skill, then it counts as a release. If you need a twisting skill, it counts as a twist. If you need an inversion, it counts as an inversion.
Perfect. Jen, that's all we have submitted. Do you have any more? Oh, did we lose Jen? Let me look in the chat here.
There's a bunch.
No,
more.
I got kicked off and back on.
Okay. So
We
Jen,
do-
I'm all set with the questions that we had submitted. Do you have any more in the chat?
Yep. I'm reading through because a lot of them are talking about some we answered and some we all right. Here's one. I understand that difficulty is comparative to the other teams you compete against, but I think I'm still unclear on if you will score lower based on how many groups you have during your sequence. For example, if 2 teams both have 12 athletes on the mat and execute the same skills, one team has 3 stunt groups and another has 2, will the team who has 2 score lower?
If both teams are the same in comparison of size and performing the same exact skills, then obviously the participation of 3 groups is valued more when it comes to difficulty than only having 2 groups participate or including those athletes by adding a front spot.
Correct. If my stunt requirement is 3 and only one of them does the most difficult skill, will that score count as my team skill, or do all 3 stunts have to perform the difficulty skill to receive difficulty credit?
Difficulty is difficulty. So take everything from previous seasons and like throw it out of your brain for this. There's no, you need to do 3 skills by this many groups, and then these are the only skills that count. Every stunt you perform in your routine matters. So if it's a transitional stunt that's being done to get to your tumbling spot, it matters. It could impact your difficulty, because if everything else is comparably the same, that transitional skill that you executed might be the one factor that separates you from another team. So highlight your team for what their skills are, and don't choreograph your routine to the difficulty skill and the drivers. Choreograph your team to the execution spot. What's going to score the best execution-wise for your team? If you can manage that, you will see the best outcome in other categories as well, because they're going to perform. Their overall impression is going to be there. Their confidence is going to be there. And that's just, it was a good point to bring up, that don't overthink these difficulty categories. Because at the end of the day, you can only perform what you can perform, and every skill matters now.
Well, and also, Medea, wouldn't that play a role in the now 5 points that you have in the overall score that the judges 3-4 are looking at? They're going to look for those transitional skills and things that make your stunt sequences and pyramid sequences more interesting. And is that true?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That overall score that you guys have now, you know, if your team doesn't have the most difficult skills, or even if your team is the most difficult executing skill team at the event, that overall category is about the unique and interesting and creative elements that you add to your building sections, to your pyramid sections, the creative entries, the creative dismounts, the transitions between skills, not just straight up, straight down, straight up, straight down. By doing those, this is also enhancing pace. Pace is a driver. Pace is also something that's considered with difficulty, because adding pace to skills creates combinations of skills. So it all goes hand in hand. So again, exactly that. Anything that you do throughout the routine is impacting in every section of that score sheet now.
Okay. Comment in the chat. I'm concerned that the language in the training leads both coaches, I'm going to guess something else, but more importantly, judges, to believe that having a bigger team is better for visuals and the score sheet, and therefore going to score higher. For some teams, it's not possible. Is there a reason why the language was used several times throughout the training? If not, can it be clarified by the committee that a bigger team should not score higher than a smaller team if all things are comparable?
Well, there are areas that could have positive outcome if your team is a larger team, that you might see in formations and transitions. And the reason I say that is because you're able to consume transitions. You're able to have more fluidity in those transitions when you maximize the number of athletes. So you see less walking across the floor. You see less movement of the athletes to move from one section to the next. And same with cheer. It's not about one team's volume versus another team's volume. It's how you carry your volume from the beginning of the cheer to the end of the cheer. The more athletes you have, the more skills you can execute while maintaining your volume versus, you know, if you have 12 athletes on the floor and you put 3 single-day stunt groups up, you're losing at one point in time, 9 athletes volume is going to drop at some point, leaving minimal athletes that are actually cheering to their best ability. And your crowd does not does not make the difference for that. Now, having said that, it could also play the exact opposite effect. It could make transitions a lot messier. You know, if you are not choreographing your routine in a specific order from beginning to end and it doesn't read like a textbook, more athletes can create more execution errors. So it all goes, it's all relative. It all goes hand in hand. It can go one way, it can go the other. And it's all based on how you perform, you execute, and your athletes present what they've been given on the floor for that day.
So to clarify for this person, bigger does not necessarily mean better, if that
No, there
helps
are
you.
no extra brownie points for going in with a team of 30 versus a team of 12. Could it have a positive impact? Absolutely. Could it have a negative? There's that too.
Okay. If there are no ranges or scores associated with any skills, how are judges scoring teams?
They set their score for the day based on the first stunt sequence that comes out, and then you range up or you range down based on the skills for the next team that go out. So you're always referencing back and comparing skills from team to team to team. And
Based on the progressions.
Based on the progressions, and then they're ranked based on the difficulty of the skills performed, how many groups are performing them based on the number of athletes.
Okay, I think I got them all.
Jen, one thing that came up while we were developing this, we actually did some practice with actual scoring, and it did take longer to score the stunts and pyramids. So competition directors might want to think about that towards the beginning of the season. It's going to take judges some time to get used to that new scoring. So they're going to want to add in a little
So
extra
put
time.
more time.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Gail, you had something.
Yes, I did. Thank you. I wanted to point out, especially I know in my section, but I'm sure it's happening in other sections. It isn't that the coaches don't understand the comparative system. You can tell by the questions. It's not that they don't understand it. They don't like it. And I don't know what we're going to do about that, but we're getting so much callbacks from the same question that one of the coaches just asked. Then how are the judges judging? And no matter how we try to explain comparative scoring, they get it. They're not stupid. They don't like it. That's my comment. As a judge, I know that's going to be very difficult to be sitting at the table. We don't write comments anymore. In section 11, we had to write comments so we could justify what we were doing comparatively. But I guess my comment is they don't like it. Whether it's a good way to score or not, they're not happy. And I can tell.
I think it's definitely something that, we're all going to have to take time to get used to, because it's moving us out of that point by point mindset and thinking that if I do this, I'm going to get this.
We understand that.
We've been slowly.
But thanks.
Right. So, any last question?
Jen, it's Alice. Just a
And
comment
if not,
quickly.
again,
Jen, it's Alice. Just to comment quickly. I think in the training, Medea does a really great job with A, B, C, and D. And I know when we were looking at, when we were testing the scoring and everything, that is a good way that coaches and can understand too, is that an A is going to obviously score better than a C and so on. So I think if we can embrace that a bit and understand that part of the scoring, it may help all of us understand comparatively more.
I agree, Alice.
Okay. Have there been competitions so far? How many?
I think the first ones are this weekend, Gail, in your section, right? In 11.
The second and third, we have them Saturday and Sunday. a JV and a middle school.
Okay.
Well, and as people do.
Okay, so the
competitions
next
and
round of
come up with
Q&A,
stuff, go ahead and submit more questions, and then we'll talk about that in the next one.
yeah,
Thank
the 12-18 is the next one. At 7 o'clock, same time. And we will get the driver check onto some sheets or the electronic scoring. Anything else for Medea or Casey?
Jen, will you be sending this to the rep so that we can send it out, the recording
It'll be
I
posted
can,
on
yes.
the cheerleading landing page.
on the website? Okay, thanks,
Yep.
Todd.
Welcome.
Even better.
And for the next meeting, the next Q&A, we will increase our capacity from 100 to 500.
That would be great.
Yes, please.
Okay. Seeing no more, I think we will log off.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you.